Okay, everybody, we are going to start with our very beginning basics of how to make a processing sketch. First off, I want to remind you about how to make comments. Comments are essential for well-written code. It's not essential for the program to work, but it is essential to include comments in your code so that other people can understand what you're doing with it and for you to leave yourself information as well. Part of this year, we're going to strive for making beautiful code that's really easy for other people to read, like myself, and also for you to read if you have to go back to it or find mistakes or whatever. So, easiest way to make a comment is, I did it wrong. It is two slashes, two forward slashes, they're called. It's the same key as the question mark. You just, press that. And then you can type some stuff in here, and it'll be ignored by the compiler. And so you can type in, like your name, for example, and the date that you're working on this project. What is the date actually? September 8th, I guess. There we go, September 8th. And there we go. There's some comments. There's other ways to make comments, but that's a pretty great way to start. You can even put these comments at the end of a line of code. So it could be a line of code and a semicolon and then, a comment at the end. So let's work towards always making sure we have our name in our sketch, and we'll talk more about how to effectively use comments as we go. Okay, comments done. Next, we're going to talk about our basic function definitions that we have to include in our sketches. So these are void setup and void draw. So these two function definitions are built into processing, and they have special meanings that I'd like to review right now. So first of all, the setup function is a special function that runs exactly one time at the very beginning when you run your program. It's great for setting things up. Hey, good name. So things like loading images or other assets, files, that kind of stuff. Setting up the graphics window. Setting initial values for variables. Creating arrays or other data structures, like setting those things up. That's what goes here in the setup. And then we have the draw function. This is the function that is going to be repeated over and over again by processing while the sketch is running. And so there's sort of an invisible loop that makes the draw function run 60 times a second, or at least as fast as your computer can handle it. Processing will automatically scale that. It's called the frame rate as your computer load changes. But if everything is going well, it'll try to run it at 60 frames a second, or 60 draw functions a second. And what do you put in here? Well, pretty much all the logic of your project, your images, the actual drawing of what's going on the screen, your all that kind of good stuff. The meat of the project is going to happen here. Just a quick mention about braces. So braces have been like a big challenge for some students as we've gone through programming 11 and even going into programming 12. A brace defines a block of code. And the brace that begins here, the open brace and the closed brace, that block of code belongs to the setup function. So all the code that you put in these braces, that's the block of code that is the setup function. Always a brace or a pair of braces defines a block of code. Okay, same with the draw function. Here's the name of the draw function. What does it do? Well, that's this block of code here, and you put the code between the braces. As we explore other things, you'll see more blocks of code being created with if statements and loops and all sorts of things. And so that can get confusing because you have braces inside of braces, and I know that sometimes we just get those things tangled up and mistakes happen, and that's pretty natural. So just watch out for that. As we are right now, we only have two separate blocks of code here, so pretty easy not to tangle them. So now, we should probably make something happen with this glorious code. So the first thing I like to do is use the size function. This is our first function we're using. So here we got size, and then we give it two arguments. We send it two numbers. This is going to be the width and height of your project. So I don't know, I'll just make like a super basic 400 by 600 sketch. So this will be the width and this will be the height, and so that'll create a graphics window. and then maybe we could just draw a rectangle or something real fast. We'll go into the shape functions in a bit. So here's a rectangle. Let's put it at 100, 100, and let's make it, oh, gotta do some math, 200 by 400? I don't know, let's see what that looks like. When the sketch runs, setup will happen first. It'll create the graphics window with this size. And then in the graphics window, this shape will be drawn, a rectangle. This is the starting coordinates, and this is the width and height of the rectangle. We'll go into the shape functions a little bit more in a minute. So let's just run it and see if it works. Whoa, yeah, here it is. Oh, wait. Oh. Yeah, no, that worked. This is the width and this is the height. So it's taller than it is longer. I don't know why I thought that would be different, but okay, there it is. And sure enough, we have a rectangle drawn inside. We can put, more drawing functions in here. We could put like a ellipse and so on. I'll put that at maybe 200, 300 and make it, and make it 200 wide. And we can just continue to add more functions into the draw function to add, additional components. Notice that at the end of every function call or statement, we have a semicolon. And that's how processing knows that you're ending this statement and starting a new statement. So semicolons happen after one of these statements. And notice that they don't happen after this this function definition. They have the braces instead. So there's a little bit of a punctuation kind of element that's going on. In general, all these punctuation things are referred to as syntax, and you can have syntax errors where you forget things. Like, for example, if I forget a semicolon and I go to run this, it says syntax error. And do you notice at the bottom, it's, I don't know if you can see on the screen because it's maybe a little bit small, but this area at the bottom of processing, this kind of black bar at the bottom, you can expand that, and it basically tells you what you did wrong. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it tells you exactly what you did wrong. And right here, it's like highlighting this line. It says you're missing a semicolon, probably, and you're right. But sometimes it'll be really off and confusing. So, for example, if I delete this brace, look, it highlights this line here. It highlights draw. There's nothing wrong with that line. But the reason why it's confused is because this block of code hasn't finished yet, and all of a sudden you're trying to start a new function. You can't make functions inside of other blocks of code. That just doesn't work, except for classes, but we'll talk about that another time. So it's like, oh, it's confused as to why you're starting a new function definition. It highlights this line, and it says missing a semicolon, but that's not really the problem at all. So the errors sometimes can be confusing. So you just have to be really careful as you move forward to carefully construct your function definitions, and one line at a time. Try to don't blast through things. Kind of think about each line carefully before moving on to the next. Okay. So hey, we made like the world's most basic, maybe not the most, but pretty close to the most basic sketch. I think it's beautiful work of art. I'm gonna pause this video here, and we're gonna come back and talk about in the next video all the cool shape functions. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.